few years ago, I had an event planned for my youth group. It was called The Great Kidnapping. And we would actually go to students' houses, 8th graders who were becoming freshmen. They were going to be invited to high school youth group. So we went to their house early in the morning and actually took them out of bed. Now, we arranged the whole thing with their parents, but I doubt that we could do this event again and call it The Great Kidnapping because of insurance purposes. However, this was an amazing event for a lot of different reasons. It meant that the upperclassmen could sort of haze these incoming freshmen. It meant that the underclassmen were getting welcomed in, and they had this sort of rite of passage that they were going through. I'm no longer in middle school youth group. I'm now in high school youth group. And it was a great event. But the other thing that sort of happened during this time is we got to encounter the teenager room. Now, this is a crazy thing to experience. And you guys who know teenagers, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The teenager room is a crazy place, right? This is the beginning of personhood, in my opinion, right? This is the bedrock of personhood. You're starting to see what music they like. You're starting to see what posters are on the wall. We're starting to see what smell is coming out of there. The teenager room is this really amazing thing. Now, some of my volunteer staff saw this as a thing to behold, a place of wonder. They saw it as an opportunity to get to know the students better. Some of my volunteer staff saw this as a problem to be solved. They saw the mess on the ground. They saw that the iguana cage maybe had a dead iguana in it. They saw all sorts of these things as problems to be solved. And I sort of realized in that moment that this is kind of how we see teenagers as a society. And I have a question for you. And I want you to answer honestly. Do you view teenagers as a burden or a blessing? Do you view teenagers as a burden or a blessing? Somebody I respect says it a little bit more smart. He says it this way. He says, do you view adolescence as a sight to behold or something to be fixed? And I love that contrast, because the way we believe and what we believe about the teenage years oftentimes leads to the actions that we pursue with the teenagers in our lives. Do you believe that teenagers are a burden or a blessing? In Barry's book, Dream House, he sets up this metaphor of the zip line. And he kind of sets it up like this, that the teenager years are a time of transition. And the places that you're going from, and you're going there really fast on a zip line, are from childhood to adulthood. And the parents' interaction with their teenagers during these years determines so much of the trajectory of what that teenager will be and what the relationship you're going to have with that adult on the other side. Now, some people who view teenagers as a burden, they see this as an opportunity to over-engage with their student. And they begin to sort of hover. Maybe as you can view maybe a good illustration for this is, the kids going over the zip line and the parents in a helicopter, right? They're the helicopter parent and they're hovering over their little baby, making sure nothing happens to them. Why? Because they view teenage years as a burden on them. And they want to make sure that, this stuff doesn't happen. They want to make sure that the bad things don't happen. Now, here's the other thing is some people see teenage years also as a burden, and instead of over-engaging, they completely disengage. They take their student all the way up to that first platform and they say, see ya on the other side. And it's a complete disengagement. Now, as it is in all things in life, balance is health. And healthy places are often found in kind of the middle. The truth about the teenage years is it is a launch point. And as we launch these people into adulthood, we have to sort of measure the right amount of engagement and disengagement. And so how do we do that? How do we do that? What I want to do today is I want to tell you not about the zipline experience I had, but about a bungee jumping experience I had. And there's a bungee jumping experience that I had that I think totally describes what it's like to be a teenager, because I believe if we could remember what it was like to be a teenager, we will know how to engage and how to disengage with our students as it is needed. When I was a teenager, I went bungee jumping. And it was a crazy experience. But here's the thing is, I didn't sign up to go bungee jumping. I didn't even know I was going to go bungee jumping because my youth pastor was stinking crazy. And his whole thing was, I got to surprise them. I got to just surprise them with this thing. So he set the camp up like this. We're going up to Canada to go to this camp trip. And at the end of the week, there's this awesome surprise. So all week we were just like, what is this awesome surprise? We get on the bus at the end of the week and we drive through this town called Nanaimo to the other side of this town to this huge canyon with a river going and a nice bridge. And it was a beautiful, beautiful landscape. We're like, maybe this is a hike, maybe this is something. But we look at the bridge and there's actually people jumping off of the bridge. There's actually people who are jumping off of this bridge. And at that point, somebody says it. Oh my goodness, John has signed us all up to go bungee jumping. And that's the absolute truth of what happened. He had signed us up to go bungee jumping. Now, in my heart, I was now scared. I was now mad. I was completely outside of myself because I didn't actually know if I could go through with this. And I was like, what am I going to do? But I look at my friends, and all of my friends are completely, seemingly okay with it. And they're all super excited about it. They're like high-fiving each other. And this is awesome. Whoa, I can't wait to do this. So being a teenager and being filled with these insecurities, I just tried to blend in with them. I start high-five. Oh, I can't wait to get up there. I tried to tell them that, basically I've done this before when I was ziplining or doing some other thing like rock climbing. I can't remember what it was, but I would just lie because I was so paranoid about the whole experience. Then we go through the line and we actually have to weigh every single individual so they know what bungee rope to use. And when they weigh you, what they do is they take a Sharpie and they write on your hand exactly what your weight is, okay? And so now I've got my weight, and I've always been a big guy. I've always been a big guy. One of the reasons I didn't want to go bungee jumping because I'm gravitationally challenged. I don't do well on steps sometimes. And so this whole experience is just terrifying me. And now I've got my weight, which they have plastered all over my arm, all over my hand for everyone to see. And I'm nervous and my insides are turning and I'm rubbing that and kind of trying to rub that thing off. And I realized that I'd kind of rubbed off my weight. And then I realized that when I got to the front, they're not going to know which cord to use now. And so I'm getting even more and more nervous. Teenagers are filled with insecurities disguised as confidence. That's what a teenager is in so many ways. They don't know a whole lot about the world. They have limited experiences about the world, but they want to project this image that they've got it figured out. So they have insecurities and they disguise them in just confident statements. Over and over and over again, this is what I see as a conflict between parents and their teenager. Is a teenager will project this confidence, this pride about life. And a parent sees that as sort of a wall that they're putting up. And that parent actually has their own insecurities about life. And because they have their own insecurities about life, they build up a wall as well. And they never sort of get past what the outside is doing to get to the heart-to-heart discussion. There's this verse that I love in the Old Testament, and it says this: the Lord does not look at the things that people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. In order for us to get to a place in our teenagers' lives where we can actually affect change, we have to get to the place of the heart-to-heart conversations. And that means pushing through that false sense of pride. That means pushing through those insecurities. Because as we push through those insecurities, we're going to find that those external things that are happening, those behavioral things that seem to be the end of the world right now, aren't the issue. what's going on is what's happening inside of their hearts. Do you ask your kids, how's your heart? Do you ask your kids, how are you feeling about these things? Do you ask your teenager, what do they love? If you can get to that place where you're not just talking about what they're doing and what their behavior is, but you're actually talking about what their character is, then you can effect change in their life that will push them into greatness past their teenage years. Get to a place where you're having the heart-to-heart conversations. All right, let's jump back into my bungee jumping story. So there I was on the bridge. I had completely rubbed off my weight, which was a scary situation for me. My heart was like pounding out of my chest, and I'm watching my friends, and they look like superheroes to me. They look like superheroes because they're not struggling with this at all. One by one, I'm just watching them jump off a literal bridge. And I keep hearing in the back of my head my mom's voice over and over and over again, what she used to tell me when I was a kid. If all your friends were jumping off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge too? And I found myself wrestling with that question in a very real way. I was scared. I was so scared. But I kept taking steps forward because my friends were there and they were taking steps forward. And it was finally my turn. Now, I remembered in orientation that I had one chance to wuss out. I had one chance to wimp out. And that meant that I could go up there, I could take a look, and then I could come back, and then I can get back in line, and then I can jump the next time. And that, they wouldn't charge me for a second jump. I had this one opportunity to look at it. Now, no one else did that, which scared me, but in my own mind, I thought I need to take a look before I can jump. So they tie your feet together with something that doesn't look like it should hold. It's a knot that doesn't even look like it should hold. And you look at the bungee cord and you realize it's just a bundle of really small rubber bands. That's actually what it is. Google what it is, because that's what it is. And the whole thing is completely terrifying. And there's a plank that you have to walk, and you don't walk it because your legs are tied together. So you have to sort of hop. And so here I am just sort of hopping out to the end of this thing. And I got to the place where my toes were right on the edge. And there's this huge Samoan guy whose job it is to make everybody jump. And so as I'm kind of going out there, he's like kicking the back of my feet and telling me, further, go out further, go out further. And I get to the end where I think I'm comfortable. He says, no, you need to be where it's just your heels on the end of this plank. And there I was, standing on the edge of a bridge. And I'm thinking, this is my look time. This is the time I'm just going to start to look. And I hear one of my friends yell from the crowd area, from the waiting room area, TJ's got to jump. And they all start to chant, as teenagers do. And they, TJ, TJ, TJ. And pretty much the whole youth group is chanting. And then all the people who are just there to do their own bungee jump, they're starting to chant as well. And I'm sitting here thinking like, no, there's absolutely no way I'm going to jump. This is death. But then I'm like, but my friends want this for me. Death, but my friends want it. Death, but my friends want it. And I'm just sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And I decide in that moment that if this is what my friends want, this is what they want, I am going to jump off of a bridge. And the guy goes, hey, I'm going to count down. I'm like, okay, let's start from 20. And he's like, no, I'm going to start from 3. I'm like, how about 10? We'll meet in the middle at 10. He goes, 3. And I'm like, no, I'm not ready. 2. And I'm thinking, I got to do this now or I'm never going to do this. And I get my feet to a place where I can jump, right? Because it's called bungee jumping, because that's what you got to do. You got to jump out. And so I buckle my knees as if to jump, and I don't come back up because I lose all of the movement in my legs. And for me, it was a bungee fall. That's what it was. I just sort of fell off of this thing. And here I was, plummeting to my demise and thinking, why did I listen to my friends? I'm going down, down, down in this canyon. Why did I listen to my friends? And that is what teenagers are. Teenagers are both driven and derailed by peer pressure. They're both driven and derailed by peer pressure. We know this as parents. That's why we are so incredibly concerned about who our kids hang out with. That's absolutely the whole thing about it. And the Bible makes it really simple. It's a really simple principle. It says this, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. Will suffer harm. It's not just like, hey, if you're a fool, if you walk with the fool, you're wise, if you walk with the wise. No, if you walk with fools, you will feel pain. That's what the Bible sort of talks about. And that's what scares us so much as parents. Parents, we have to be concerned with. This is not hover parenting. We must be concerned with who our kids are hanging out with. Why? Because we become our friends. If you want your kids to look like Jesus, it would be a really good thing for you to encourage them to hang out with friends who love Jesus. There's so many kids I've seen along the way who had really, 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 really great potential, great attitudes, great personalities. But they were derailed by bad relationships, by toxic relationships, by friends who talked down to them and made them think less about who they were and put them in situations that were bad for them and constantly put them in harm's way. Over and over and over again in my youth ministry career, I've seen young people derailed by peer pressure. But the crazy thing about peer pressure is it's not just a bad thing. In fact, peer pressure could be one of the best things in your life. I thank God for the friends that God put around me when I was in high school, because those are the people who became some of my best accountability. Those are the people who became some of my best encouragements to be more like Christ. It was them rooting me on in my life. It was their encouragement in my life that I know got me past some really tough times. So parents, do you know your kids' friends? Do you know if your kids are in bad relationships? Have you earned the right to speak to them in a real way about who they are hanging out with? And it's okay to tell them your fears about why you don't want them to hang out with certain people. I think it's a great opportunity in life, and I completely believe in the opportunity that we have to witness to people who don't know Jesus. In my life, some of the greatest stories, and even when I was in high school, some of the greatest stories that ever happened to me were when I got to engage with non-Christian friends for the gospel. But I never let those non-Christian friends become my closest friends. My closest friends were always people who loved Jesus because I loved Jesus and I wanted to be closer to Jesus. If you want your kids to love Jesus, first of all, model Jesus to them. But second of all, make sure that they're going to youth group, that they're involved in church, that their friends are people who love Jesus as well. Why? Because whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. All right, so here I am completely falling to my death. And on the way down, it all slows down. Just like they say, like your life flashes before your eyes. My whole life was flashing before my eyes. My favorite dog from my childhood, words of wisdom from my father. Different things were just going through my mind as the ground was getting closer. And I started to think, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Maybe I shouldn't have overcame. And this is the first time in this whole situation where I thought about the ideas of risk versus reward. Mostly I just thought I wasn't going to do this, and then I just did it. I never weighed out the option. I never put together the pro-con chart. I just did it. And that reminds me of most teenagers, because most teenagers don't weigh risk versus reward. They see risk as reward. They see risk as reward. Now, this isn't every teenager. I know a lot of teenagers who are pretty thought out and they don't like taking a whole lot of risk. But there's so many teenagers, and it's kind of a part of adolescence that even psychologists look at, is that they don't feel like they could possibly die. They are invincible. And this is the thing that worries parents into the late hours of the night. Is my kid going to do something so stupid that we won't be able to recover from it? And no matter how many times, you show them those videos of the bad decisions that you could make, and you tell them the story of the kid that who made that one bad decision and it changed every piece of their life. No matter how many times you do it, they still keep making dumb decisions. Why? Because they see risk oftentimes as reward. What if we could take that and harness it in the right direction? One of the things that I always think is kind of crazy is how people talk about how all these geniuses dropped out of school in order to do the thing that they were supposed to do. And people always think, well, isn't that crazy? This person founded this huge company and they dropped out of school. And whenever I hear that, I'm like, it's not that crazy, because they've already built, in their teenage years, they had already built the thing that was going to change culture forever. And they didn't need school because they saw school as what school is. It's a launch pad, and they had already launched. One of the great things about teenagers is they don't feel fear the way adults do. They're not paralyzed by fear the way adults are, which means that they're actually capable of amazing and awesome things. It means that they can do things that we actually cannot do. There's a whole list of things that were started by teenagers. But for some reason, we as parents, we've gotten to this place where we've thought of adolescence and we've thought of teenage years as sort of this waiting place. It's this place of training. It's this place where you don't really accomplish a lot, but you just sort of train for the time when you start accomplishing a lot. What if we took the fact that kids don't weigh risk versus reward, but they see risk as reward, and we put that towards a project, towards something that could change their world, something that maybe could change the world? What if we saw teenage years as a blessing because of the confidence that they have towards this world? And maybe it is undeserved confidence, but what if we could take our confidence and we could validate their undeserved confidence, and we could have that heart-to-heart discussion, and we could dream with them about what they are to become, and we could tell them that in their teenage years, they could actually accomplish this thing. I believe that teenagers can do more than they are told and what we think that they can do. Can we believe that teenagers could change the world? I love this verse, and we always see it around the time of graduation. It says this: be strong and courageous. This is the verse that we should be completely praying over our kids constantly. This is what we should be saying to them over and over and over again. Instead of stop that, don't do this, we should be encouraging them with these words from God's word. Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened. Do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. That's the same thing of, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because God is with me. Do you believe that God walks with your teenager? And because God walks with your teenager, because they don't feel fear the way we do, could actually change the world, could actually change their world, and then ultimately change the world. Because that's what I believe. And I wouldn't do what I do if I didn't believe that. All right. Back to my story. I'm falling to my death. I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. Here it comes. The ground is on this way, and this miraculous thing happens. Right before I'm about to dip my head into the pond and the rocks below, I stop. I completely stop, and you actually stop there for a good 1 to 2 seconds. You stop, you can see the ground, it's up close, and then you get rewound. That's what it feels like. It feels like you're dying, and then someone hits the pause button, and then they hit the rewind button. And all of a sudden, you start flying back into the air, and you feel like you're flying. And you see your friends, and you're going, I did it. This is so awesome. And they're all cheering for you, and it's so amazing. And you're feeling so good. And then you start to fall again. And you're like, oh my gosh, here I go. I'm going to die again. Here comes the ground again. And you stop right before you hit the ground, and you fly back, and you bounce up and down, up and down. And you go between the feeling of, I'm going to die, to this is the greatest feeling I've ever felt. That's where teenagers live. Teenagers live in this land. To be a teenager is to live with high highs and low lows. To be a teenager is to live with high highs and low lows. It's not that teenagers encounter situations that are radically different than the rest of us. It's the fact that they actually feel things that are radically different than the rest of us. For some reason, God ordained it that during these years, a whole bunch of hormones and chemicals are going to be pumping through their body constantly, over and over and over again. So the little things that for us don't seem like that big of a deal, they feel completely holy, fully. They completely feel all of it. And that means that they have high highs and low lows. And if you're like me, sometimes when you see a teenage overreaction, you want to just roll your eyes because you know that the punishment doesn't fit the crime here, that the reaction isn't close to the action. And that's a problem for us because we think, oh man, what are you doing? Why are you reacting this way? I think that one of the things we have to do is we have to learn to validate emotions as teenagers. We validate emotions as parents. We can't just roll our eyes every time our kid feels something, because whether or not the action warrants the reaction, we have to validate that they are feeling a very real thing. And if we don't validate that they're feeling a really real thing, what they end up thinking is they end up thinking that my feelings and who I am isn't valued by my parents. We have to get really good at teaching students what to do with what they feel. This is something that Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, did really well. This was his whole shtick, is he told kids, not usually teenagers, maybe some teenagers, but mostly kids, he told them that their feelings were okay. But this is what we do when we feel certain ways. If you've done the hard work in your child's life and you've gotten to a place where you've gotten past the insecurities, you've dreamed for them about what they could become, and you have their heart in front of you, one of the things you have to learn to do, and it is such a huge win for them, they will thank you for this one later, is tell them where to put these emotions. Don't tell them to put the emotions away. Tell them the actions that they should encounter in order to make what they felt real in this world. All right, back to my story. So here I was. I'd gone up and down a bunch of times, and then I was just laying there, upside down, like a fish. And that's what you do. You just wait till you stop bouncing around, and then they just sort of let you dangle there, and then they lower you into a boat. And now you have so much adrenaline, so much dopamine. Every chemical in your body has been turned on high, and you're just feeling everything, and you're getting lowered into this boat, and you have just this amazing just smile on your face. It's just a beautiful, amazing smile. And there you go. You get lowered in the boat, they take you back to the shore, and you walk sort of in silence back to the waiting area. And as I came into the waiting area, there were all my friends. They were all right there, And it was amazing. They were cheering, they were slapping me on the back, we were hugging, we were talking about each other's jumps, we were talking about what we felt. And then we all just started to stop lying to each other and told everybody how scared we actually all were and how every single one of us felt this incredible terror. But because we kept seeing other people jump, that gave us strength to jump, and we knew we had to jump. And it was just this incredible time of celebration. I think as parents, we have to learn to celebrate accomplishments. Now, this isn't that like millennial thing where, hey, everyone participates so they get a participation trophy. It's actually a lot more small than that. It's in that it's not about a whole season. It's actually about the little things that happen in your kid's life. But it's actually even bigger than that. Celebrate accomplishments. When you see good character coming out in your student, it is imperative that you take time to recognize that and celebrate it, talk about it, pat them on the back, cheer for them in those moments, reinforce the character that you want them to become. And as you reinforce the character that you want them to become, celebrate along the way the character that starts emerging. We have to celebrate accomplishments. And now I know there's so many things out there, and we think of this as childish for some reason. We think of this as like Awana, where you get a badge for something, or Cub Scouts, where you get a badge for something, or in kindergarten, where you get a little treat or a little star for something. And you think, well, do teenagers really need that? Well, here's the crazy thing is, we all really need that. We need people in our lives to say when they see good things in us. And that's how we call our students out of childhood and into adulthood, by celebrating the little things along the way. And those celebrations won't just be, hey, that was cool, awesome job, but they will serve as rites of passages in your student's life. And in that way, they will come out of the other side of that zip line ready to launch into this world with good character. Why? Because you were a parent who wasn't a hover parent, who wasn't a parent who just said, I'll see you on the other side. But you were a parent who knew when to engage and when to disengage. I think one of the things that's kind of happened in our world today, and it's kind of sad, is that the class of 2020 isn't going to get the graduation that they deserve. They're just not going to get it. And I think for a lot of us who work and advocate for young people, we see this as a pretty big deal, that there's not going to be that celebration at the end of this era. My team at GracePoint, we want to help with that. We've thought about different ways we can do it, but we're confined to the same things that the schools are confined to. We can't give them a graduation that the schools can't give them because we have the same rules here. But what we want to do in order for you as parents to win and to celebrate the accomplishment that they did is, what I want to tell you is this: if your student was a graduating class of 2020, they're going to get summer camp for free this year. Now, we're going to have summer camp in some form or another. Hopefully by the end of July, if we have to move it into August, we're going to have a summer camp in one way or another. That is, my team's been working on that. It might shift a little bit, but we are committed to giving them a great summer camp. And we want you to win in celebrating their accomplishment of graduating. And we want to give them summer camp for free. So if you know a teenager who graduated this year, who's bummed out right now, let them know that their camp has already been paid for, and sign them up today. Why? Because we want to celebrate the accomplishment that happened in their life. I want to conclude with the way Barry concludes this chapter in his book. And it says this: yes, the teenage room is often a messy room with cluttered shelves, piled up clothes, and something nasty growing in the corner. But it is a crucial room in the home, and it needs special attention. For our homes to become healthy and happy, we must take the time to provide the essential information to our teenagers. We need to speak those words that will echo in their minds, in their hearts, and throughout their lives. Doing this will make the admittedly scary zipline ride across the adolescent canyon a more pleasurable experience, not only for them, but also for the parents. Grab your teenager, take a deep breath, and zip away. God, I thank you so much for the teenagers in our lives. I pray that our parents and our grandparents and the people who know teenagers would engage with them where they needed to be engaged with and disengage where they need to launch. God, we know that teenage years are a scary time, and we trust you with our young people. God, I pray a special blessing on the class of 2020, and I ask that you would be already preparing them for great and mighty things. We love you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.